Good evening from New York. I'm Ali Velshi in for Chris Hayes. It's a sad kind of conventional wisdom at this point that an approval rating of 30% is pretty much Donald Trump's floor. There are some 30% of Americans who will support him no matter what he does or says. And that's exemplified in his latest approval rating from Reuters Ipsos, where he sits at a 33% approval rating, which matches the lowest point that he hit in his first term in that same poll. So about 33% of Americans have decided he's my guy. They're fine with paying more for gas. They're fine for paying more for groceries and appliances. And I actually buy the 30% argument. We've seen it play out over two different terms. It's his polling dam, if you will, but the dam is breaking. Zeteo is reporting that Trump advisors worry that he could sink into the high 20s. Now, apparently, in the weeks before we got all of this declining poll numbers, several people, quote, some administration officials, some outside Trump advisors began privately conceding that it was distinctly possible that Trump could hit the high 20s in major polls, end quote. And the private polls and those that are commissioned by various arms of the Republican Party aren't much better, according to one operative close to the White House who has knowledge of that data, which apparently has caused, quote, a sustained bedwetting from much of the party that President Trump is going to drag them down hard in the critically important midterms. And so the hardcore MAGAs, you know, the stand in the middle of Fifth Avenue and shoot someone crowd, maybe even they're saying to themselves, this just isn't worth it anymore. And mathematically speaking, those are pretty much the only people he has left to lose. Now, as the data guy around here, I will admit, apart from the Zeteo reporting, this is a bit of postulation because polls are not elections, and we all know that. But they do give you a snapshot of how people feel and think at the time the poll is taken. They give you a sense of trend. And by the way, all the polls on this say pretty much the same thing. It doesn't matter if it's a poll from Fox News or Reuters or YouGov or The Economist or AP. They're all telling basically the same story. Donald Trump is on a downward slope, but that's okay because that happens too. The problem is that it's 74 days until the election, and he's got, in my opinion, no tricks left up his sleeve. Remember, his whole shtick during the campaign was vote for me to lower prices.
Starting on day one, we will end inflation and make America affordable again.
We're going to bring prices way down, and we'll get it done fast.
A vote for Trump means your groceries will be cheaper.
I want on groceries. It's a very simple word, groceries. Like almost, who uses the word? I started using the word, the groceries.
I started using the word the groceries? He's right, by the way. He did win on groceries, that beautiful, old-fashioned, quaint word, groceries. But now, well, as soon as it was his responsibility, his tune changed to it being a hoax.
The word affordability is a con job by the Democrats.
They have a new word. They always have a hoax. The new word is affordability.
The word affordability is a fake word but made up by the Democrats.
They used the word, first time I heard it, it was a word, made up by the Democrats. Affordability.
In my first day, the press said, what are you going to do about affordability? It was a word they devised, affordability. No, they never used that word before.
I'm not going to get into whether anybody's ever used the word affordability before, but let's get past that. The real problem with that messaging is that most people in this country are living inside that affordability crisis, whether or not they use that word, right? You might just come home and say, wow, it cost me $120 to fill a gas. That's not you didn't use the word affordability, but you're making the same point. And the president's not doing anything about it. As oil prices keep going up and the national debt balloons, he will not end this war that he started with Iran, despite having no leverage, and no other way out of that war other than saying, forget it. As American service members are pushed on extended deployments, he will not acknowledge how hard it is for them, saying that they haven't been at sea in combat conditions long enough. Blame the sailors. Blame the soldiers. As his masked federal agents continue to round up our neighbors, and they killed 2 Americans in the streets, and they killed and severely wounded several foreign nationals who weren't even the targets of law enforcement, he decided rolling out dystopian stun gloves to that same force of officers might be a good idea. As everyday Americans struggle with rising costs, affordability as he calls it, He's out there in front of the White House bragging about a remodel that you're paying for, from the ballroom that the Supreme Court just greenlit, to the reflecting pool, to the helipad that has been put in and ripped out and put in again, and the little walkway that he wants between the two.
You can see the kind of granite this is. This granite has a million-year life. It's a very strong stone. It will never break. It will never leak. It will never do anything. This is the highest quality stone you can get.
This is what he's talking about. He's out there every day doing things that people do not like or do not care about. Look no further than the South Carolina Republican Senate primary runoff for proof. Donald Trump is hitting the campaign trail, not in a battleground state or even for a battleground member. He's in deep red South Carolina holding one of his hallmark campaign rallies for Darlene Graham right now. RN, as the kids say. The strategy has left many confused, including one longtime Republican operative in South Carolina. Quote, if I were the president, if I were giving him political advice, I'd say, yeah, we're right next to Georgia. We're right next to North Carolina. Texas ain't that far away. There are some real places that are going to affect the party keeping control of either the House or the Senate, and it's like he's just flying over them and ignoring them, end quote.
You see that? And as soon as we're finished with the Islamic Republic of Iran, as soon as we're finished, oil is going to be down at lower than it was even just a little while ago. We had it down to, for your cars, we had it down to 100. Think of this. I went to Iowa, love Iowa, and one gas station had it at $1.95 a gallon, and another one had it at $1.85. And then I went to meet with my people back in the White House the following day. So we went down and we stopped them. They'll never have a nuclear weapon. They want to make a deal so badly. We don't even know if we want, because I view the Strait of Hormuz as an American territory right now. It's an American territory.
I mean, I don't know what to say. Beef is not coming down very rapidly. Neither is oil. And the Strait of Hormuz is not an American territory. And so finally, there is a glimmer of consequence. The midterms are 74 days away. Labor Day is just around the corner. This is the home stretch. It's when people who aren't paying attention, like we are, start paying attention. And every Trump poll is trending in the same direction. So for everyone pearl clutching and hand wringing about Democrats not being able to get it together, and I'll grant you this, I've been one of those people for a little while. Wow. Things they sure have changed, haven't they? Republicans are all but admitting it. Trump has given them less than nothing to campaign on. Amanda Litman is the co-founder and president of Run for Something and the author of When We're in Charge, The Next Generation's Guide to Leadership. Max Rose is a U.S. Army veteran of the Afghanistan War and a Democrat who represented Staten Island and parts of Brooklyn in the House. He's now a senior advisor for Vote Vets. Thank you, my friends, for being with me tonight. Max, I just want to start with you because fighting for your country and agreeing to maybe sacrifice your life for your country, it's a big deal. And most of us do not make that commitment. You are one who has. These sailors on the USS Abraham Lincoln have some real beef about what's been going on.
Sure.
Their ship has turned around. They've been at sea for over 9 months. He mocks them. He doesn't respect them. Being in a war that the country doesn't understand, they don't get support for, that's happened before in America. It's happened in Afghanistan. It happened in Iraq. It happened in Vietnam. It's happening again. But at least support your damn troops.
Sure. And look, this is not the first time Donald Trump has done this.
No.
Right? This is the guy who called the fallen suckers and losers. We all know about the dotted line that service members sign on where they swear an oath to protect and uphold the Constitution, even if it means losing their own life, the ultimate sacrifice. But there's another implicit promise that our nation's leaders make to those service members, which is should they make the decision that they will go to war, one, they'll make sure that it is a constitutional process. Yep. Two, they will make sure it's well thought out.
Yes.
That there is a plan, that contingencies are considered. They won't just say, hey, it's a 4 to 6 week war or conflict. We'll be fine. They think it through. That's not what happened with this conflict. And we are seeing the consequences of it. Yes, with the Lincoln, but in so many other ways.
In so many other ways. There are 12 service members who have died, and lots of innocent people have died. And Amanda, there are a lot of people who might ideologically be against this war or any other war we've been involved in. But let's say you and I were ideologically against this war. I would still appreciate if they were running it, that they would run it like not a joke and not a video game.
They should take it seriously because it's people's lives.
Yes.
It's also good politics to take it seriously. And I think this is one of the things that is really going to screw him and the Republican Party over in the midterms is the explicit promise he made to young men in particular, no new foreign wars.
Yeah.
And we heard this in focus groups and exit polls over the course of 2024. I don't want to go to war. No new foreign engagements. He broke that promise and now is treating it like a
many times over. We talk only about Iran, but it was 8 different times. It counted as Iran because it was hit twice. Max, let me ask you about. I've had this conversation a few nights. I had it with David Jolly a few nights ago. I'm going to be talking to Angie Nixon in Florida, and I asked David Jolly. I said, "You both won in Florida, so there are people who voted for a former Republican member of Congress and a DSA candidate." And David Jolly said to me, "We both went to the same meetings. We both talked to the same people. We both get the same questions, and we both have the same answers. People want their stuff to cost less, and they'd like their government fundamentally to work." I ask you this as a guy who ran as a Democrat in a place that's fairly Republican and won.
Sure. Look,
And lost.
Yeah, that is true. Although, when you and I have often talked about when you win, you look like a genius, man. And when you lose, it takes a little while to get invited back on TV. So thanks for that. But look, in the end, right, voting is an emotional process. And people respond to who they see. They respond to the message. They respond to who shows up. But I would also say this, amidst all this talk, and it makes for good show business about these ideological divisions within the Democratic Party, I don't see it.
Yeah, and let's be fair. If one were putting you onto a spectrum, you're not on the more progressive side of the spectrum.
Listen, I resist any effort to put me on the spectrum.
That's my point. You don't want to get involved in that discussion.
Because it's irrelevant.
I'm
okay.
I'm helping you make your point.
The Democrats are talking about universal health care.
Yeah.
There's different tactics to achieve it, but they all agree that we should not rest until everyone has a home, everyone has health care, everyone's costs are driven down. That's the universal project here. So, yes, there's some debate about tactics, but when the Democrats are this homogenous entity that gets behind a person or a policy universally without thinking, we lose. So I like the debate.
Yeah.
I like some of that chaos. That's representative of a dynamic party. That's not a sign of weakness. That's a sign of strength.
So, Amanda, Max said something, and I'm hearing it from every candidate, particularly when they're up against, with 20 points against them or something. Who shows up? Your entire operation is about showing up. It's about people running for office, not picking districts where they are likely to win, just running for office. How many unlikely successes have we watched in the last 12 months? Starting right here in New York with Zohran Mamdani. That guy wasn't polling at 5%.
Run for Something alone has helped Taylor Amet down in Texas win in a state Senate seat that Trump won, I think, by 17 or 19 points. We helped Emily Gregory flip Mar-a-Lago blue. Trump is now represented by a Democrat in the state house in Florida because Emily put in the work to talk to voters. She's now running up again this fall. We've seen this over and over and over again. And I think it's to what Max was talking about. They're talking about solutions. They understand that voters do not have ideologies. Voters have problems. They want solutions. And mostly they want to not think about all this too much. And candidates who are speaking to those problems, who are giving them a path and a vision for what else might be possible, they're going to be able to win, honestly, regardless if it's an R or D or progressive or centrist or moderate after their name.